Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. Get ready to hear stories of someone brave enough to bear it all. Your past doesn't define you, but it does lead you on a path to today. Let's get naked. Hello and welcome to the Naked Podcast. We're already starting off with a bang. I have Miguel Dane today, who has been a past guest, and today I'm doing a sacred masculine healing session with Miguel in the UK. And I'm really excited about this. So first jump into your website and the book and that information.
Okay, thank you very much, Jen. So yeah, my website is nice and simple, www.migueldane.net. Lots of free resources and interviews and podcasts and blogs and all sorts of stuff on there if you want to find out a little bit more and get a sense of what I'm about and who I am. The book, Bring Him Home, the Twin Flame Love Story. That is available if you want a personalized copy from the website. But most people do prefer to go to good old Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or, you know, it's available from most good book retailers. It's in the Kindle version or the paperback version at the moment. So yeah, you know, do check it out. I'm sure I'm getting some, well, check out the reviews. That's always the best thing to do. Check out the reviews and that will give you a flavor of whether it's a book that you should read.
Well, I read it and I'm a review, so you should definitely check it out. I did the Kindle version because instant gratification. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a Kindle, I own a Kindle, and I can get it immediately, and I love it. And I read it, and I'm always blown away by other people's writing styles. Once you're an author and a blogger, you know, and you've written a lot for a long time for many different publications for a living. And I've done some of that too. And I love other people's writing styles, but the story was riveting. It was engaging, and it was sassy. That first sex scene, I was like, yes, this man's speaking my language. I loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I wanted it to be. It was funny because there was a little voice in my head when I'm writing the passionate scenes that's kind of going, oh, who do you think you are, Miguel? You know, to be writing this. There was some resistance, and I just kept pushing through it because I wanted it to be a sort of the opposite of 50 Shades of Grey. I wanted it, you know, I wanted it to be sacred sex and something beautiful, and, you know, and how profound and that, you know, it's one of the most amazing gifts of being in these human bodies is sharing them with another, you know, with love. So yeah, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate
I loved it. So today I am your client. I'm doing a coaching session with you, and I'm always nervous and excited about these. I know you're going to make me work. It's going to be good.
Nervous and excited is always good. It's a good formula, isn't it? When you feel nervous and excitement, you know, it's like, hey, something's happening here.
It's so weird. So this is personal, but like, I'm one of those people who sweats very little. I'm a runner. I ran 4.5 miles this morning. Now I don't have to get, I have deodorant. I don't have to use it very often. It's just not that big. But these coaching sessions, I want to be like, you know, it's so weird. So I know it gives me some sort of internal adrenaline to do this. And I mean, the Naked Podcaster, I ask my guests to bear it all, which you do, and I do it physically and you do it emotionally, and it's all a great metaphor. But the coaching sessions, which were not my idea initially, but I love them and I've run with them, that makes me like, now I'm great. I'm physically and emotionally the naked one in these. And yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking, but really great results, and people get to see what it's like to work with you. So
yeah, totally. And there's such a liberation in your courage to be vulnerable. You know, that, as you know, that was kind of part of the way that I write and what I write about. There's such a liberation in it, and it liberates others. I know you know this stuff.
Yeah. So jump right in. Just
okay, let's go for it. Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of you jumping right in, really, because you know what I need to know to start with, Jen, is well, I suppose just maybe a little tiny bit of framing. Sacred masculine healing sessions, I tend to call them. That doesn't mean that they're for men, obviously, because you are here, Jen. but it means there is a sacred masculine energy transmission that, you know, that is received, as well as the sort of nuts and bolts of the language and the conversation, you know, that we will have. So quite often the sessions will activate emotions, activate thoughts, memories, dreams, and, you know, and I always say in between the sessions is just as important as what happens during the session. So just be mindful of what you do straight after the session, and yeah, and just check out, see what happens in the, you know, in the days afterwards.
The great thing about that is that from the time we're recording till the time that the release happens, there's some space in between. And I'm really thankful for this. You know, I mean, I basically just record and put you in line. But the really fantastic thing about a coaching session is the download that happens afterwards. So I'll be able to email that to you, and it'll be part of the show notes. So as this releases, in the show notes will kind of be the after effects, or the ripples, or those things that happen even after the coaching session. So that's actually very exciting, and I'm glad you pointed it out, because I tend to talk to process, but energy work is a lot of internal movement and shifts, and so that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Good, yeah. So really, Jen, you just start wherever you want to, you know, perhaps an area that you want to shed a bit of light on, or perhaps it might be a trigger of yours, or it might be something you would want to improve on. You can't do this wrong, really. You start wherever you want to start, and it will weave its way to exactly where it needs to go.
I think I wrote the book, my book was about my life growing up in dysfunction. I've been very open about that, and I'm sure, I'm absolutely certain that I have triggers. The child part of me has triggers. Mm-hmm. But I've been very open about that. The thing that I struggle with now, though, is actually my youngest daughter. Mm. So she just turned 10 in January of 2020. We have 18 kids. So I had 14, and then I was divorced. And relationships have always been, I don't like the word failure, and I don't think it's accurate, but because I had 3 serious relationships, all of which ended, and especially when children are involved, it feels like it certainly wasn't a success the way that I imagined it would be. I know a lot of relationships aren't meant to stand the test of time, but when you're navigating as a parent and your goal was that that relationship would stand the test of time, that's a very difficult for me, because not necessarily because I don't miss the relationship, and I know why they ended, and I'm grateful that those relationships ended, but in the how it's affected the kids and how I've had to navigate that. But I had 14 kids, and I was divorced, and then my actually oldest daughter and a mutual friend of ours introduced me to Dane, and we just celebrated 6 years in February of 2020, and he had 4 kids and his wife had died. So because I'd done foster care and adoptions, having another parent who exists somewhere that's not involved was familiar to me. Having that parent be gone through death was not. We actually have some of her ashes. And at first, you meet this guy, you have a new relationship. I'm like, oh, cool, your dead wife's ashes are in my closet. So that doesn't make me feel creeped out at all, And instead of saying it that way, I was like, so can you explain to me why you have your dead wife's ashes? And he actually had spread most of the ashes when she passed away. And she has a younger sister and brother, and the sister was really affected. She was 14 or 15 when Danielle died. So in Dane's mind, he saved some of those ashes, because if her younger sister grew up and reached out to him, he would be able to give that to her as a gift so that she could have closure with her sister's death. Now, once you hear that, you're like, oh, I love having the dead wife's ashes in my house. Then it's not creepy anymore. It's this sweet sentiment. I actually, I don't think I'm super intuitive, but I have an intuition that is not what those ashes are for. I think that Tavin is the 10-year-old daughter. She's the youngest of the 4. And it's an interesting dynamic for a lot of reasons. There's like an 8-year age gap between her and the next one. All of his 3 older kids and all of my kids really condensed in age. I mean, we had of those 18, like the 13 that are adopted, or I had 5 that aged out and were like extra kids, but of the 13 kids that are adopted or biological, 12 of them were born in 10 years. And then we have this 7-year gap and this little girl at the end, and she was 2 when her mom died. And I intuit that those ashes will actually be for she and her dad, or I think it's her closure with her mother, because she was 2 when she died and she was 4 when Dane and I met. So I'm mom, but there is a disconnect in our relationship that she is aware of and vocalizes, and that I'm aware of and vocalizes. And she's had energy work sessions, and she's had NLP, which is neuro-linguistic sessions. And in that, what has been revealed is that, she holds on to a lot of anger. It can be anger that her mom's dying. It can be anger that I'm in her place, which it's not personal. It would be anyone that took that place. But all of her anger is directed to me. It doesn't matter if she can't find her shoe. Anything that translates to anger in this little girl's heart is me. I'm the scapegoat for that emotion. And saying that, I think, is she was a 2-year-old girl who lost her mom, and 4 years old when I came on board. So although as an adult that logically doesn't make sense to me, it's the emotion of that 2 to 4-year-old little girl who lost her mom. And so I'm very aware of that, although even though she's vocal about, even this weekend, she's like, I'm not as, she was telling Dane, her dad, I'm not as close to mom as I want to be. And I see the other kids, I'm very close with our kids. Even Dane's other 3 kids, we have a really close relationship, and she sees that, and she knows that ours is not the same. And she doesn't know why, but I don't know why either. So something in this process of whether it was that her mom passed away and I've held back, or there's something in that. And I tie in the relationships that I had that failed, because I think that there are threads that happen that may come up. This is the best relationship I've ever had. And if I designed a relationship and how, the perfect relationship and how I wanted things ideally, if I nitpick the shit out of this relationship, there would be very little that I would change in our connection and communication. And parenting, we have the same parenting goals, different parenting styles, same philosophies, but we have a complete disconnect in parenting this child together. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I don't know what to do with that information, but as far as where my heart feels the most hurt, it's that I don't want her to feel that I love her differently. I don't want her to feel like I love her less than the other kids, or that it's conditional somehow. And I don't know how to rectify that. That's the biggest struggle that no one knows about. Because people just see me as, aren't you a great parent? And, oh, her poor mom died, and aren't you great to take that on as if it's some burden, or I don't know. But people's perception is their perception, and my internal struggle is that there's something disconnected there.
Yeah. There will be something disconnected. I mean, if you think back, so she was 2 years old when her mom went. She, had formed this secure attachment with her mom, and then, all of a sudden one day she doesn't come back. That's a big, big trauma for a little 2-year-old who probably won't consciously or even cognitively be able to process that, or perhaps remember it. I don't know, she may, but emotionally that trauma is still lodged inside her, that which, because it was too big to feel and fully express, for a child that age. So what tends to happen is that, you know, there will be, I mean, this is interesting because it's very similar to my story.
Yes. Isn't that shocking?
Mm-hmm. Ain't that interesting? Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, my mom died when I was 7 months old, and then I would live with my auntie for a year and a bit. So I will have been about 2 years old when I sort of lost my second mom, when I was taken from my auntie and reunited with my family. So, yeah. What's your daughter's name?
Tavin.
Teven.
Yep. Tavin.
So Teven and I, you know, we
Yeah.
share a lot there, and you know, what tends to happen is that there's a, you know, there's a wall, there's a wall around her heart, a protective wall, you know, and which is kind of made up of the unexpressed emotion and the pain of that experience. And so that's what is not letting you in, because it's too dangerous to let you in fully, because you might leave as well.
Understandably. As she's gotten older, and she actually, it's shocking to me the amount of memories she has of her mom, considering she was just over 2. It's shocking.
Yeah.
And when we met and got together, Dane had there's a process, but he had lost a lot of sentimental items. And so he had like 4 old cell phones, a computer, and an iPod. And I brought them to, it ended up being several people, but I brought them to a friend who helped at least I downloaded every photo and every video that I could off of every device. And out of that, put together kind of an album. And then from that album, we have the videos so she can hear her mom's voice and she can see her. And I did that to all of my kids that I've adopted or foster kids. I created an album. I met every birth parent. It was very important to me to be able to pass on, you know, information about these biological parents in the event that they died or something happened or the kids didn't want to get to know them eventually down the road, or they wanted more information. So I wanted to be a vault of sort of this information for all of the kids. So then I printed off a lot of the pictures, and his older kids and I put them together. So it was great for the whole family in healing, because we went through all of these photographs and put together an album for Tavin. And so she has memories, and it is shocking how many memories she has. And of course, the story is tragic, but there's a lot that she'll learn about it. The tragedy was, some of the tragedy were the decisions that her biological mom was making. So there's a lot to the story, you know, that of course she doesn't remember, but she remembers these odd things, you know, like I remember mom's stomach was really fat and her back hurt. Well, she was 36 weeks pregnant when she died. She was 36 weeks pregnant with Dane's son. But Tavin doesn't know that she had been a heroin addict. And her back hurting was from an accident, which is how, you know, her prescription medication went into her addiction. So she has these memories where I think, oh my gosh, when she's ready and the time comes and she has these conversations with her dad, these pieces of the puzzle that she just does not understand will be put together. And I know from the situation that it wasn't this dream parent that was lovely and wonderful, but for a 2-year-old, it was a dream parent that was lovely and wonderful. And so there's so many layers always to the stories, you know. So I put together this album, and I'm shocked at how much she actually remembers. And as time's gone on, she remembers less, but it's been replaced with this photo album and these videos where she can actually tap in and see and hear her mom and ask questions and learn the stories and all of that, which has been great. We're very open about it. One thing she did was she plugged me into her younger life. So although she knows that she was 4 when I came around, she would make comments like, well, remember when I was a baby and you and dad and my mom were all together? Like the 3 of us were all, and I was a baby and you were holding me. And because she plugs me in. And although we've told her, well, actually I wasn't around then, but I know the stories. I don't have the memories, but I know the stories. And the other thing that she's very stuck on is that her dad and I have not gotten married. We've been together over 6 years now. We've never done it. I don't care if we do or we don't. Either way is fine. In her mind, us getting married makes me more her mom.
Mm-hmm.
So she also, which is interesting because we haven't, that didn't come from us.
No.
And she knows that she asked if something ever happened to her dad, what does that mean for her life? So she knows that we have a trust. She knows that we have paperwork, that I would be her legal guardian. I would be able to adopt her. So it's very interesting, all of the little pieces put together, but yeah, it's been really trying.
She sounds really yeah, and yeah, it must be trying, and it seems like she's really pretty switched on and sensitive and so on, you know, to be coming out with some of these comments. And also you know, it also makes it clear that she's thinking about this stuff, you know. It's,
A lot, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Very kinesthetic.
yeah,
And dad and I are very visual. So we have to
yeah,
be conscious of the fact that this is a very kinesthetically wired child.
yeah. I mean, are you of the belief, do you share my belief that we choose the parents, we choose our parents, that we reincarnate with the parents out of choice in order to have the right conditions for the growth of our soul and to experience the things that we need?
Yes, I think we choose our situation. Yes.
Yeah. So Tavin has chosen this situation, and she's chosen to be born to a mom that wasn't going to be around very long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she's chosen to have you as her mom. The fact that she's, you know, the marriage thing I think is interesting, but I think that's probably, you know, there's a lot of external influences and, you know, films and movies and programs and social media that talk, you know, so there's a bit of that insecurity of if they're married, perhaps it's less likely that mom's going to go again, you know. But I think in a way, there was one thing that you said that caught my attention, was you said that you didn't want it to be, there's a kind of part of you that didn't want it to be as it is. You want it to be different. So there's a couple of kind of questions around that, and I suppose the first one is, what would be, how would it be in a, you know, ideal case scenario? How would you really like it to be, and what would it be like if you let go of wanting it to be different?
That's a great question. As far as different, I don't want, how do I word this well? Right. You know, you can say you love all your kids the same, but you have a different relationship with each of them. I don't think she sees how different as a parent I am with each one of the kids, although I love them the same. I don't want her to see that I have less of a connection with her, or that in that she feels like I don't love her as much, or we're not as close. She feels like we're not as close as I am with other kids. And that's her expressing that. But I feel that same lack of ability to get close to her in that same way. And I would have thought, maybe this is ego, because I did so many years of foster kids, and I had, you know, the 5 that stayed with me long term and the 5 that I adopted, and, you know, 3-step kids, that this situation wouldn't be different. Like I'm good at bridging that gap.
Beautiful, yeah.
And being okay, yet you have other parents involved in one way or another. And and even my own biological kids, they came forward that their biological father was abusive, and I took custody of them. And even last night, 2 of them were talking, I want you to have a good relationship with your dad. I don't know what that looks like, because I can only I only have the ability to affect my relationship with you. But I want that for you. The same thing with kids that were adopted or kids that have biological parents out there. I want that for you, and I don't know what that looks like. It's a different relationship than mine, and I'm here to help navigate that with you if you need me to. But again, it's like a separate relationship. So I would think, out of ego maybe, I'm good at that. Like I've been a great parent. I put 150% in. I made my quota of mistakes. I had to learn to say I'm sorry. I had to learn to clench my teeth and not react. I mean, you know, and there's no perfect parent, but I've done really, really well. And one of the things that I was good at is having other parents out there, and one, not being that I'm not intimidated by that. I'm not worried about that. It's a different relationship. So I don't, and I'm not with her. So I want it to be different in the sense that I honor her mom, but that doesn't stop us from being close. And that's what's different. I haven't been able to do that. So I feel like I'm not doing it well.
Yeah. But, you know, is that really true?
I don't know. I know I have a 10-year-old child who knows that she's not close with me and wants to be and doesn't know why, and expresses that.
Yeah.
And she sees my other relationships with other kids,
Yeah.
including like grandchild relationships where I'm really close, and they're like, why didn't I sit on your lap and you sang to me and stuff? Well, it's not that I didn't do that. You were 4 and she's a year old. And like, you know, I mean, she points out situations where she feels like she and I are not as close, or I don't react the way to her that I do to another child, in a direct example.
Yeah.
And now older kids are older kids. So that's a little, and really younger kids are much younger kids, but she still feels like somehow I'm slighting her in that connection, or that it's different. So it's not just my perception that I can't break through this barrier and have a closer relationship. It's her perception also.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to be different. What if it's not different? I think I would need a new set of rules. I mean, and that's probably not the best way to say it, but we just have to, sometimes you have to embrace the suck, the stuff that's not as good. This is where we live. This is where we are. Meeting it where it's at, I guess, would be letting go of that.
Yeah. There's something in here about your external validation. It's, you know, I know a little bit. I think you said to me once that your mom could have been a great mom. So there's, you know, there is a part of you that is responding to that in, I'm going to be the best mom there is. Yeah. And I know you're aware of that. So this little girl, Tavin, she's kind of like the fly in the ointment, like, you know, it's like, you know, I want you, you know, I want it to be as good with you as it is. And I want to be the, you know, the not the perfect, but, you know, the really good mom. And so that's pressing your buttons around, you know, I can't get 100%, like, you know what I mean? She's like getting in the way. I've only got 95% and I want 100%.
Right.
And that, you know, and the urgence, the need for that is always a compensation of your internal validation. You're using that to prove something to yourself, because there is another part of you that doesn't feel fully worthy, that unless you are the perfect parent, as opposed to, I'm good enough and I'm beautiful just as I am. I don't need to be perfect at everything.
Well, that sucks to feel that it is hard to let go. And you're right, that correlation. Yes, I absolutely knew that it should be different, and it could be different when I was growing up, especially, you know, things change after the birth of that first child. You have a child and you're like, oh my God, like now the whole world shifts. And I set out like it's going to be different. And I didn't know in the beginning what that looked like. And God, I'm lost a lot of the time in parenting kids. but I know I'm working towards being the best that I can. And with her, it's like right here in my face.
Yeah.
You're not as good as you are with the other kids, and you're not as good as you could be. And that is really hard for me.
But it seems to me that you're good enough, and there's a bit of comparing going on, it sounds like, as well. It's like it was always going to be different with Tavin.
Yeah.
She has her own journey. She has a completely different journey, and as I know you're not going to be the sort of person that applies the same rules to everybody. There's, what is it, a differentiation, that what's right for one child isn't necessarily right for the other. So you are going to be treating her differently, but you are treating her to the best of your ability and as fairly and as lovingly as you can. And some of that is outside of your control, because Tavin will be blocking you to a certain extent, because it's just too scary to fully let you in. And of course, it's easier for her to, she's young, she's going to see, well, it must be the parent. She can see there isn't this disconnect, it's not quite the same connection. She can feel that, but she hasn't got the awareness to actually be able to sort of own her part in it, or self-reflect, be able to step outside of herself and come to terms with all this stuff that she's got created a little bit of a barrier, so that you don't get too close, because that's just so risky. And if you were to go as well, it's going to be different. It's like it sounds like a little bit of a conflict in you. It's like there's a bit of you that's saying, I knew it's going to be different, and I'm fine with it going to be different. But there's another bit of you that's like, I don't want it to be different.
Well, I know she's different, because you're right. Every child's personality, every one of the kids' situations, how they came to me, what their baggage was. It's even the kids that I adopted at birth and breastfed, they came to me with a different story. They know that their story is different, even though the beginning of the journey started out the same as a biological child once the birth happened. And as a parent, my goal or my style or my consequence, or they're all the same, but you do gear it differently. My daughter, who's shy and quiet and has anxiety, I'm going to speak to in a different way than I do the one that's loud and boisterous and challenging, directly confrontational. So I know that she's different. I just feel so lost navigating the best way for her. And that, I think, is the hardest part. I think I am battling with myself, because I feel like in the past, those answers have kind of presented themselves, and that hasn't happened, despite the fact that for 6 years, I've been very aware. And she calls me mom. I'm mom. And when she did the session about anger, all of us were completely shocked. She's like, oh no, like my mom's the one, all of it. It was astounding. And when the session was over, she just started to cry, and she hugged me and she said, Mom, I'm so sorry. Because she didn't, as a little kid, you don't realize that you're taking all these emotions, channeling them into anger, and then just blasting me with them. And I knew that she was a kid that was angry, and truly, it was shocking for all of us. And so the good thing about that is we get to have conversations, because she went through her own process to learn some about herself. So it's a good starting place to have conversation. And also, we've been talking about, because there's this 8-year gap, all of our kids are growing up and moving out. So in another few months, she's like an only child in a huge family. And it's a struggle for her, because she was used to having all of these personalities and dynamics in the house, all these kids. We had 12 kids at home just a few years ago. And now she's going to be the only one left, last one standing. And that will be her reality for the next 8 years of her life. and she doesn't like it. She misses having those siblings around and the personalities and that constant engagement and interaction. And so we've just been talking because her sister graduates in 4 months and is planning on moving out. We're discussing like the chores and the household, and we've never had to do this before. I'm really good at managing 12 kids. I am completely clueless at having one. And kids came so rapidly for both Dane and I, you know, they were so close in age and there were so many of them so quickly, that we've never had just one at 10 years old. We had one at 2 years old, and then we had two, and then we had three, and then we, you know, it. So we've been honest in our conversations, Dane and I, about like, I said to him a few days ago, we have to start over and come up with a whole new way to do this because neither one of us knows how, on top of the fact that she's the child that is the most kinesthetic and emotional of all, probably almost all of the kids. And on top of that, she's the one that feels this loss the most acutely. So there's several different pieces of her personality all at the same time that make it. So we're coming up with new rules. So this is a great time to have this conversation with you, because honestly, I'm at a loss and it hurts me because I want her to feel like she's loved at the same level she thinks the other kids are loved by me.
Even you know that you love her the same as you love the other kid, but she doesn't.
Yes.
But that's outside of your control, isn't it? That's, you know, there's a bit of letting go, it sounds like there. Yeah.
A lot, probably. Yeah.
It's also, you know, it's a gift, a challenge and a gift, you know, that you're in this place, you're out of your comfort zone and learning how to do one child, you know, as opposed to sort of, you know, shepherding the herd, as it were.
Yeah.
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 So that's a little bit, you know, that's a little bit uncomfortable. And I guess I'm, you know, it sounds, okay, so I'm curious and I'm wondering, are there similarities between the way Tavin is with you, your relationship with Tavin, and the relationship that you had with your mom when you were a little girl?
Wow, that's a really fascinating question. Possibly, which could be quite a trigger for me. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Probably, I would have to say yes, or it wouldn't be such an interesting question. I think, for very different reasons. And of course, a trigger for me is being compared to my mother. And just a few days ago, she said the first thing that was ever a breakthrough in our relationship, and I'm turning 50 this year and she's turning 71. So like, hello, it's about time, you know. She said that she's been in relationships where she put herself in danger. All of her relationships, she's put herself in danger. And we ended the conversation and how, you know, she's alone now and single and working on that and how she needs to recognize that. She called me back a couple of minutes later and she said, I'm sorry. I realized that by putting myself in danger, that meant your whole life I was putting you in danger. And I said, I didn't think about it when we hung up the first time, but I said, you're right, you did. Because I don't have a lot of, if I really separate things, I don't have a lot of super negative baggage in particular about my mother specifically, except that she allowed situations to happen and didn't step in. Yeah. And as a kid, I felt like I was asking her to step in, and she did not. And so because of that, a mom that could have been like this really good mom, you know, she had all of the pieces, right? But was living her own very dysfunctional story while trying to parent two little girls. wasn't able to be a great parent and put us in danger. And so, yes, I was that little kid that always wanted more of a relationship. Maybe you see that it could be different, but it's not. And Tavin is the same way. She's a little girl who sees me and knows that it could be different, but it's not. And that's a horrible thing to feel as a little kid.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a bit, you know, it sounds a bit like you could, it's that thing of, you know, when you can see somebody, they're physically there, but you can't reach them. They're not emotionally available or psychologically available or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
And for you, what was happening was that you were kind of present and unarmored, if you like, but your mom was, you know, so you couldn't reach her. But it sounds like it's kind of inverted with Tavin. She can't reach you because of the unconscious barriers around her heart and the fear of, you know, of experiencing what she experienced again. But it's triggering the same thing for you,
Yeah.
which is why it's, you know, more intense and it's a big deal for you, because it's giving you an opportunity to let go of some of that energy that you're still carrying around your relationship with your mom. When you have done that work and when you let go of that, you will find that you will be able to accept and be and just, you know, accept your relationship with Tavin more, and in the acceptance there will be a greater connection. Does that resonate?
Yeah, a lot. And it's really hard because that's the last way I would want her to feel, the way I felt. I mean, that's my little girl sad, you know, me.
Yeah.
And wanting more. And yeah, so you're right though. If I don't somehow work through it, then I'm feel like I'm feeding the beast without realizing it now. So how do we do that? How do I rectify that in myself so that I can be okay with where things are? Because if I am, I feel like the conversations that I have with Tavin will be completely they'll be geared differently, or my I probably have an unconscious desire to like make sure she doesn't feel this way, you know, and so it's a square peg in a round hole that I don't even realize I'm doing in my conversations with her. So I'm thinking, if I work through my own and I'm not tethered by that, then my conversations with her won't be as much a square peg in a round hole anymore. I'll be able to say things in a different way or approach it in a different way where it automatically is more natural.
Yeah. You know, there's a bit of there are things that you can change, and there is some deeper acceptance that is required of you as well, because you can't make it all okay for Tavin. It's going to be different. She has her journey to go through, and it may be, you know, I was in my late 20s before I began to really start processing, you know, the stuff around the death of my mom and loss of my mom when I was 1-2 years old. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to be like that for her. The kids are coming through these days super conscious and super sensitive, and, you know, and things can happen a lot quicker. But there's a degree of acceptance. And, you know, in response to your question, you know, how do I do that? You're doing it, honey. You're doing it. You've brought it to consciousness. You're aware of it, and it's moving in you, and it will never be the same again. You will see it differently now, and you can step back, and you can, you know what, I guess what's being asked of you is to mother yourself, Jen. Be the mother now to you that you never had, or, you know, that you know, those bits that you wish that your mom could have been there for you. Be that for yourself now. and be gentle. You know, you've been and are such an awesome mom, and it's time just to turn a little bit of that inwards. It seems to just being a little bit mumming, just mummying yourself a wee bit, and just being gentle with that. The way that you would with Tavin to your little girl, the wounded little girl that is inside you, that you sit her on your lap and you give her a cuddle and you say, "It's okay, honey. It's okay."
I was asked to do that before. You know, I have to say, when you think you've done all of this work and then something else comes up and I'm just pissed off that like, you know, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how many times, when you find these threads that are still there that aren't done yet. And it's a little frustrating. And I did an activity I used to, when I was a little kid, I used to hide in this closet, it was in the eaves of the house. So it was this little misshapen, 3-foot tall, like little crawl space closet. And I would hide in there. And I did energy work, and the woman said, there's a place that you went that was really small, and you need to crawl back in there and curl up with that little girl and tell her it's okay that you're there. So what you're saying is the exact same thing, to hold her on my lap, basically. And since then, I've been conscious of the fact that I have this little girl that sometimes just needs to be held and told it's okay. Mm-hmm. And so she just still needs to be held. That's, I'll try not to be pissed off about it. Like, damn it, Miguel, really? I thought we were past this. No, we're not.
That's it. Yeah, that's the mothering bit, isn't it? The not being pissed off with yourself and being gentle with yourself. And that, it just seems to be layers of an onion, Jen. When are we ever done with it? There is always more, and there is always deeper. And that's okay. The journey is the destination.
Yes, I agree with that. And I'm also relieved because I didn't make the connection in myself. Mm-hmm. So,
and it's okay that there's an opportunity to deepen your self-love and your self-acceptance in the I am perfectly imperfect. You don't need to be the perfect mom. There is no such thing as a perfect human being. We are perfectly imperfect. We have our flaws. We are saints and sinners. We're a bit of everything. We're dark and light. We're angel and animal. We have all this different blend inside us, and it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. That's just being too hard on yourself.
This time around, for sure, I think I was a little bit more gracious in the past at knowing perfection's not possible, and just doing the best I can and being really, really okay with it. This is not, Tavin's not been like that. And I don't know if it's partially because I understand the loss that she's had, and I want to give her even more, I want it to be even better than before. But yeah, I wouldn't have made the connection to my mom and why I was so thank you for that.
You're most welcome. Yeah. Tavin has her own journey, and perhaps the best thing that you can give her is just accepting and because she wants it different, because she can feel something, but if you want it different as well, that's just kind of feeding it. If you can just kind of model, hey, it's okay, honey, it's different to that, or it's a bit different, but that doesn't make it any less. It's just how it is. You have a different story, and there's a different dynamic with every kid, and that doesn't mean that I love you one tiny bit less than I love the other kids.
Right.
Well loved, and it's different, and it's okay for it to be different. Yeah. How does that feel? How does that feel? And I'm very conscious that you've been really brave, and
I have to let go of not wanting to cry. doing this I was like, it's fine to cry, because I'm the person that's like, hold it all together and be strong for everyone else. That was my role from the moment I was born. I feel like, just keep it all together and be strong. And so years and years and years ago, one of my girls, who's one of the more sensitive, said, I don't remember a time I ever saw you cry. And I said, that is a disservice, and I'll change that. I can't be that. So I knew today I would have to just let things happen. And if crying was part of that, and it feels really good, it's not what I want to hear. And that's what's hard. But it is what I want to hear.
Yeah, I get you.
Um,
Now it's in the light and it's not in the shadows. You can start working with it.
I feel instantly less resistance within myself. When I talk about Tavin, I feel my body tense, and I feel my energy. I feel resistance that I hate, and I don't feel resistance anymore talking about her. And that is a gift, because that was me trying to fix it so hard that I was just putting the square peg in the round hole. Without even I didn't realize how much resistance I was holding in my body, until you worked through that with my mom. And I realized, it's like, you don't realize how sick you felt till you're better. You feel better. You're like, damn, I felt sick for a long time, and it's definitely, there's going to be a lot, in the beginning we said, I'll have to process this afterwards. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I know. Yeah, that was a logic. So from an emotional standpoint right now, there's a lot I'm going to have to process. So, that's why I know that I have gratitude for the space between when this releases, because I get to process that and share that in the notes. So read the notes. But I love when you get to the root of something through healing sessions, because you feel that internal shift almost immediately. And then I think, oh shit, there's so much more that's going to come. Like I know from this initial shift, it's like a rubber band that just
but you know where I am.
I do know where you are. I do know where you are. I already feel like my approach to conversation with her will be completely different. So that's a really great shift already.
And you've got this session recorded, obviously, so you can play it back. And I think the big takeaway that for you, that I'd like for you to take away, Jenn, is whatever that you want to take away as well. But for me, it's Tavin is like your little girl. She's you when you were a little girl, and and while there's that element of you taking care of yourself and saying that the little girl inside you, she is the physical manifestation of that. In a way, she is that little girl that wanted to be closer to her mom.
Yeah,
couldn't quite do it.
Thank you so much.
Oh well, it's been my pleasure, and as I say, a total respect for you doing this. And hey, these are the rewards that we get when we're brave and we're vulnerable and we step out of our comfort zone, huh?
Yeah, I appreciate you so much, Miguel, so much.
It's totally reciprocated. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. You take good care of yourself and look after those little girls, yeah?